Hi, and welcome to Math Today. All right, today we're going to be talking about multiplying fractions. We've been doing some adding and we've been doing some subtracting of fractions. Now we're going to start multiplying fractions. Now let's think about multiplying for just a second here. Say that I have 3 times 5. So we're multiplying here. What does that really mean to have 3 times 5? Well, what we're saying is that we have 3 groups of 5. So if we drew a picture of that, we could say, okay, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have 3 of these groups of 5. So it's the same thing with fractions. What if we have groups of fractions? Okay, so think about that for a second. We're going to kind of work through this problem up on the board up here, and we're going to draw a picture of it so we can kind of get it in our head how we can multiply fractions. So we're starting with 8/3. So let's just draw a picture of that to start with. We have 1 of these thirds, and 2, and 3, and 4. And 5, 6, 7, and 8. So here we have our 8/3. So our amount that we have is 1/3, and how many do we have of them? We have 8 of them. So we could say in our next part, it's wanting us to actually section those thirds into 2/3. So it's like we want to combine this into 2/3 and this into 2/3 and this into 2/3 and this into 2/3. So we have these 2/3 chunks that we are adding together over and over. So we're multiplying. We have 4 groups of them. So here's our 4 groups of 2/3 is going to equal 4 times 2/3. So we could actually write it like this and say 4, because there's 4 groups of them, 4 times 2/3. And what does that look like? We're going to have 4 times 2 is 8/3. So we're basically taking 4 groups of 2/3 and making it into 8/3. All right, now if I was to think of this as whole numbers, we have this improper fraction. We could actually change this into a mixed number if we wanted to, right? We could actually take these 3 1/3 pieces and these 3 1/3 pieces, because it takes 3 1/3 pieces to make a whole, right? So we can make a whole here and a whole here, and then these are left over. We don't have enough to make another whole. So we could say that this is equivalent to 2 wholes and 2/3 left over. We could rewrite that as a mixed number right there. Okay, so kind of the gist of multiplying is we're taking how many groups we have and timesing it by the amount that we have to get our total. So we're keeping our denominator the same. The only thing that we're timesing is we have 4 groups of 2/3, and that's where we're getting our 2 in there. So 4 times 2, so you can see up here, 4 times 2/3 is 8/3, and we can rewrite that as a mixed number. Okay, so now we can also write an expression and kind of skip to, so this was kind of like writing out unit forms of the expression, but we can kind of skip straight to what if I have 10 groups and I want to time 10 groups of 3/5. So really, if I drew a picture of this, what would that look like? Well, I would have 3/5. I could just make this a 3/5 piece, and another 3/5, and another 3/5, and another 3/5, and another 3/5, to have 10 of those. So I'm 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I'm out of the picture here. Gotta move ya. And so we've got 3/5 and 3/5. So we're saying, okay, we have all of these 3/5 that we're adding together. So we can just say 10 times all of these 3's that we're adding together. 10 times 3 would be 30/5. Okay. Now, if I added up all of these 3's, how many would I get? Well, I could add them all up and I would get 30. But I'm basically saying I have 10 3's, so 3 times 10 is 30. Okay. And then I could go through and I could rename this as a mixed number and say, okay, well, how many holes could I pull out of this? Well, I could do 5/5. That would make a hole, and 5/5 here. That would make another hole. 5/5, another hole. 5/5. That's another hole. 5/5. That's another hole. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, and one more 5/5. So really, I am making how many? I have a whole number here, don't I? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So my answer would be, or 6 right there. Okay, so kind of the gist of multiplying is the idea is that you have this amount or this fraction, but you have multiple amounts of them. You have 10 of them, or you have 5 of them, or however many of them. Let's see, I think we have time to do one more really quick and say that I have, let's do 3 times 5/6. So really, I could draw the picture and have 5/6, and there would be 3 of them, right? 3 of these 5/6 pieces. I could draw them out and have 1, 6, 1, 6, 1, 6, and group them into groups of 5 if I wanted, like we did on our first problem. Or I could write it out this way. But basically, I'm saying if I add these 5's 3 times, or 3 times 5, I'm going to get 15/6. And there would be my answer. And then I could change this into a mixed number and say, okay, well, let's do a number bond here. And I have 6, 6. That would be 1 hole. Another 6, 6 would make 12. And I have 3 left over. 3, 6 left over. So I have 2 holes and 3, 6 left over. All right, so that's kind of the gist of multiplying a fraction. If you have any questions on your assignment, bring it to your teacher on your Zoom meetings. Put a question mark by it, bring it to your Zoom meetings, and we will work through it together.